1 minute, I might point out
Gentleman's recognized for a minute.
Bush did not leave this country with a deficit. Speaker Nancy Pelosi and her Democrat colleagues left this nation with a deficit. And it continued to grow. The first year of their governance, the deficit doubled. The second year, it tripled. Then it went to trillion dollars, and only under Republican House have we started to cut the growth in the deficit today. The truth is, on immigration reform, Democrats held the presidency, the House, and the Senate, and they did nothing. When it comes to reducing the deficit, they held the House, the Senate, and the White House. They did nothing. When it comes time to grow the economy and give the middle class a fighting chance, they held the House and Senate and the presidency and did nothing. Let's not stay the course, because that's got us going in the direction. We need to change it. The Republican budget does it. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. The gentlelady from New York.
May I inquire how much time remains?
The gentlelady has 3.5 minutes remaining, and the gentleman from Texas has 8 minutes remaining.
I yield such time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
I'd like to yield to the distinguished whip on the Democratic side, Steny Hoyer from the great state of Maryland.
How much time? How much time? How much time do you yield to the gentleman?
As much time as he may consume.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for as much time as he may consume.
1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
I was sitting in my office downstairs, and I heard Mr. Brady, Mr. Speaker, make the extraordinary claim that it was the Pelosi leadership that led to the doubling of deficits. I would remind the gentleman, as he ought to know, and I'm sure he does know, not a single economic plan was passed in 2007 or 2008 that changed the Bush economic plan. Not a single bill. And to make the assertion that the deepest recession he and I have experienced, Mr. Speaker, in our lifetimes, which occurred under the Bush administration with Bush economic policies, was somehow the responsibility of a Pelosi-led Congress, is absolutely absurd, incorrect, and the gentleman ought to know better. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman
yielding myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
You know, I know the facts hurt. I know they hurt, Mr. Whip. The deficit doubled the first year under Speaker Pelosi and your leadership. The deficit tripled the second year under your leadership. And every year, the President Obama...
The gentleman will suspend. The gentleman has the time. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I know the facts hurt. I know these deficits hurt real people. And I know the Democrats now want to revise history. They didn't create the deficits. They didn't create this slow economic recovery. Everything's going great, but it's not. You created record deficits. You took what was turning into lower and lower deficits and a trend to the balanced budget, and you exploded it, and our American families are hurting today. Millions more can't find a job. Young people with college degrees are working behind a cash register. The deficits are frightening and scaring America. It came under Democrat leadership. It has continued under this Democrat presidency. I know the facts hurt, but those are the facts. I reserve the balance.
The gentleman reserves his time. I remind members to direct their remarks to the chair.
I yield myself 30 additional seconds, followed by 30 seconds from the great leader from the great state of Maryland.
Gentlelady is recognized for 30 seconds.
The facts speak for themselves. George Bush's administration left us with a $1.4 trillion deficit. They cut taxes, led us into 2 wars, and they blew the deficit. Look at the Democratic deficit. We had a surplus from Bill Clinton, and President Obama halved the deficit. I yield to the distinguished gentleman from, I reserve the balance of my time and reserve to the distinguished gentleman from Maryland.
For how much time? How much time? How much time did the gentleman?
30 seconds.
Gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
I tell the gentleman from Texas, I do know the statistics. 800,000 jobs lost in the last month of the Bush administration. 800,000 in 1 month. The worst job production since Herbert Hoover under the Bush administration. Yes, this administration has had tough times because we inherited such a struggling, devastated economy from the Bush administration. The gentleman knows those figures are accurate, and he ought to admit those facts. The budget deficit went up 87% under George Bush when he inherited a balanced budget. He inherited a balanced budget.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Ought to be truthful with the American people, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Gentleman from Texas.
Granting myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized for as much time as he may consume.
The President doesn't allocate funding. He doesn't spend one dime Congress doesn't give him. A Republican Congress balanced the budget for President Clinton. And under President Bush, a Democrat Congress doubled, then tripled, then went to trillion-dollar deficits. This Congress, your legislative branch, you passed a nearly trillion-dollar stimulus without one Republican vote. You passed $1 trillion Affordable Care Act that's continued to destroy the economy and drive deficits even higher. That is the truth. Those are the facts. I know they hurt, but we're not revising history today. We're talking about changing the course of this country away from deficits, away from the second-rate economy, toward a country that actually can grow and grow stronger. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time, and I again remind members to direct their remarks to the chair. The gentlelady from New York.
I yield the distinguished whip 30 seconds.
The gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
Unfortunately, we don't have the time, but I would like to take the time at some point in time to discuss the facts with the gentleman from Texas. And I will take a special order out to do exactly that, to discuss the economic success of Democratic administrations and Republican administrations in bringing down the deficit. And let me say further, I will repeat to the gentleman, no change in the Bush economic program was affected in 2007 and 2008 because George Bush was the president and would have vetoed anything we passed. So the representation to the contrary, Mr. Speaker, is inaccurate.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Mr. Speaker, yield myself 30 seconds.
The gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
Mr. Whip, I'm your Huckleberry. I'll be glad to have that debate with you in a special order or anywhere else. The fact is, this country is struggling. Your leadership has failed us, and as a Democrat governance in this White House, it is time to change course. I would like to yield 1 minute to my